We continue our reflection today on sin, but today we focus more specifically on a few attitudes which I will propose and put before you. These 5 attitudes which I will suggest are attitudes that I found in my own self. So, in a sense, this is a sharing of what I experienced in my life when I reflected on sin. These have to do with my person and how I regard others. How do I look at others? How do I relate with others? How do I think of others? How do I deal with others? In Mark chapter 1, verses 16 to 20, we read about the call to the first 4 disciples, Simon and Andrew, James and John. And when Jesus passes by, he sees Simon and Andrew casting their net into the sea. Casting the net on the surface level is to fish. However, casting the net on the deeper level is interpreted as the evangelical aspect of mission, that is, the person going out to draw people through one's life. That is the evangelical aspect of ministry. In chapter 1, verses 18 to 20, we read about the call of James and John. And we are told that James and John are in the boat with their father Zebedee, mending the nets. While mending the nets is in order to prepare for fishing so that the nets were not torn when they were cast. Mending the net also refers on the deeper level to healing the breaks in community, healing the breaches in community. And so these 5 attitudes which I suggest are a starting point in order that you might ask yourself, are there any attitudes which are within me which have not been mentioned among these 5, which are responsible for breaking community? Our lives as religious, while surely an individual commitment is required, we are also called to make that commitment within community. One of the points about our lives as religious, and especially as Jesuits, is that we live together in community. So what then are these attitudes which I might have within myself, which will be responsible for breaking my community, no matter where I might be? The first of these is, I know. I know. I know everything about everything. This attitude of I know is seen on 3 levels. The first level is this, namely, that because we are in the society, because we are religious, we have had the privilege, I would even say the luxury, of being sent for studies and higher studies. Not simply a bachelor's degree or a master's degree or even a doctoral degree, but even postdoctoral degrees and so on. And all because the society is gracious to us. So really, all of our studies Then we have the opportunity, we have the privilege, again, the luxury of making a retreat every year. It is often the case that when an individual Jesuit finishes a few years of his ministry, he is allowed to go on a sabbatical and to all the parts of the world. Now tell me, with so many facilities, would it be surprising that you didn't learn something? With so many facilities, would it be surprising that you did not know something? Yeah, but the problem is this, that even as we move through our formation, and it happened to me in theology, as we move through our formation, we think we know everything. After my first year of theology, I thought I didn't need to learn anything more. Because it was true that whenever I was doing a course, the only marks I would get were above 75. And those days when I was doing theology, the computers had not yet come into India, and we used to type on typewriters. And so on my typewriter, when I typed, I would type without even making a draft and submit my assignment within about half an hour. And I always got 80 and above. So because of that, after my first year of theology, I said, I know everything about everything. There is nothing that I can learn. Now, my brothers, this is what happens to us. So many of us have been privileged to have these great degrees. Because of this, we might tend to say we know. Now, there are some who might not even have those degrees. Of course, it doesn't mean that because we have the degree we know. No, but there are some who might not even have those degrees, and they would think that they know, because somehow, I do not know when it has seeped into the society. This is one of those things, and that's why people translate SJ as subjuncta. Do I know everything about everything? I may know a lot about my field of research. I may have read a number of books. I may have written a number of articles. I may have written a number of books. And all of that is fine. And yet, in the play Hamlet by William Shakespeare, Hamlet is having a dialogue with his friend Horatio. And in one of the dialogues, Hamlet says to Horatio, there are more things in heaven and on earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophies. There are more things in heaven and on earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophies. There is a legend about Thomas Aquinas. And the legend is this, that after he wrote his 5-volume Summa Theologica, in which he mentions those 5 proofs for God's existence, the legend is that he knelt down after that great voluminous work, he knelt down and said about God, the only thing we can say is we do not know. Now, that is a mystic. That is a saint. That is a knowledgeable person. That is the person who knows. The second level of I know is when our dealings are with others. In community, I know that guy, man. He is exactly that. The fellow will never change. He is belligerent, he's obnoxious, he's rude, and often when you're saying that, you're simply exposing yourself. You are belligerent, you are obnoxious, you are rude, and that's what you see in it. I I know exactly what you're thinking. I know exactly what you're going to say. I know exactly. And sometimes I ask people, how do you know what's in my pocket? How do you know what's in my pocket? If you do not know what's in my pocket, how can you possibly know what's in my mind? But so easily, because we may have done a few courses in psychology, even because we might be psychologists or psychiatrists, we know. I know exactly. So before the person can speak, you already know. And so you stop listening, you stop looking, you stop dialoguing. You simply know. You know exactly what that person is going to say. I've given a number of retreats to priests and religious, including Jesuits of a variety of provinces. And this is what I found when there was a time we used to give those personal retreats to these group directed retreats and so on. The first talk, at least about 90% would come without a note, without a pad, without anything in their hand. They would come there, sit down, and put their arms across their chest like this in front, and they would just sit down and keep looking at me. In one particular retreat, there was not even one person out of, believe me when I say, 50. They were not Jesuits, but they were religious. Not even one person out of 50 who had a notepad. So I was really stunned. I said, usually it's maybe about 80%, 85%, but here it's 100%. So no one has a notepad. So I was intrigued. At the end of the talk, I asked them, I said, brothers, because they were seminarians. Imagine they were seminarians, not even priests. I said, brothers, I'm a little surprised because in many retreats that I give, people come with the pen and they have a pad in their hand, they take down notes. But here, I have noticed that not a single one of you. So, what is the reason? Okay, I can understand. After you hear the first talk, you hear the second talk, or you hear the third talk, and you say, okay, this guy is not giving me something new, so I don't need to go for the talk, or I don't need to take my notepad. But the first talk, you don't even know me, I don't even know you. What is the reason why? So they replied saying, Father, usually in the first talks, nobody says anything. That's why. Now, for me, while that is true, that may be true, that they really said nobody says anything, and therefore they said there is no need to take down, but it shows the attitude, and why I'm saying seminary, because it shows the attitude somehow that I think we develop in religious life and in the seminaries. With lay people, I have not really found this happening. And so the second level is, I know exactly what you're going to say. I know exactly what you're thinking. So we can read the person's mind. Jesus could do that, but only in the later gospels. In the earlier gospel, like Mark, for example, he could only read the signs of the times. He could get what is happening from what he hears, not from what he knows. And the third level, my brothers, which is the most dangerous, is when we label people from the community or the place they come. Oh, these Malayalis are always like that, man, never change. These Tamilians, what can you say about them? These Gujaratis, lazy buggers, man. These bloody Mangaloreans are bloody snakes in the grass. These Goans, they are bloody susega. These Anglo-Indians, don't even talk about them. I hope I've not missed out anybody which is in your province. Oh, these Spaniards, they have already come here, they should go back. You see, we label people and we put them together in one category. Now, labeling is happening in our world, as we know. We are labeling people by caste. We are labeling people by color. We are labeling people by religion. We are labeling people by sex. And we are labeling people every single way because the label helps us. And now we have got a new bloody label, and there is migrants. I bloody hate that word. You know why? It makes us comfortable. Let's have a seminar on migrants. You're bloody having a seminar on Zoom, you idiot, when the migrants are dying on the road. Have your seminar on the bloody road. Migrants. Who's a migrant? You and I are migrants also. Everyone who has come to have a little food to eat. That is my definition of migrant. Call them properly. They are the poor. They are the marginalized. They are the downtrodden. They are whom they are stamped upon. Use that term. That is the real term. Migrants is a created term. It makes me feel good. They are the migrants. And who are those migrants? When we talk about migrants, whom do we mean? The people walking on the road about thousands of kilometers just to touch the feet of the parent. And when they go there, they realize there is no food. And you got to come back once again. After touching the feet, it's time to come back. That's all they wanted. But they are the poor. They're not migrants. Because every one of us is a migrant. There is no individual who is not a migrant. A migrant is a person who has come into a particular place to simply fill his own stomach and the stomach of the family members. And so we label people, we stereotype them. When I go to a new place and people don't know me, there are two questions that they ask me when they know I'm a priest. And the first question is, Father, what's your name? So I tell them my name. The second question is, where are you from? Now, while it is very genuine that they want to know where I'm from, I'm not sure how it will help them. You know what it will do? It will possibly lead them to label me. It will possibly lead them to stereotype me. So what I do is I point to heaven. They look up for a minute, are confused, then they understand. Oh, yes, Father. We know that all of us are from heaven and we have to go to heaven. But where are you from? Once again, I just simply point to heaven. If they insist, then I ask them, how will it help you to know where I am from? They cannot answer. Yes, it will help you, but to label me, to stereotype me, to say, from our place, this is our father. Now, my brothers, for every of these attitudes, I have been able to find attitudes of people in the scriptures, and we see the danger of having these attitudes which were present already in people at the time of Jesus. And I'm pointing you out to Mark chapter 6, verses 1 to 6. Mark chapter 6, verses 1 to 6. Jesus, up to chapter 6 in Mark, has been shown as a man who can exorcise demons, who can heal lepers, who can heal paralytics, who can heal a man with a withered arm, who can talk eloquently that his authority is greater than that of the scribes who were knowledgeable people. This Jesus has been shown as a man who can calm the storm, who can heal a woman with a flow of blood for 12 years, who can heal the Gerasene demoniac whom no one would even bother to encounter, and who can raise Jairus' daughter. Up to chapter 6, this is the Jesus. And now in chapter 6, Jesus goes to his hometown. And as soon as the people see him, what is the response? We know. We know. Hey, this fellow, he's the carpenter. He's the son of Mary. His brothers, his sisters are all there. We know where they stay. We know. Okay, not a problem. It's not a problem to say because it is true that he was a carpenter, he was the son of Mary, even though they are insults actually, because Matthew will change it. Matthew 13:53 to 58. It's not this the carpenter's son, it's not his mother called Mary. So Matthew will not allow Jesus to be insulted, but Mark does not care. So Mark will have, it's not this the carpenter, the son of Mary. He's a bastard. Son of Mary, is that what they're saying? He's the son of Mary. We don't know his father. We know his mother, but we don't know his father. Why I say that? Because the next verse says, and they took offense at him. Why did they have to take offense at him? What did he do? He did nothing offensive. So why did they take offense at him? Because they said, we know. We know means you can be up to this level. You cannot exceed that level. You cannot go so high. You cannot be one who raises from the dead. You cannot be one who exorcises demons. You cannot be one who heals lepers. You cannot be one who is so popular. We know that it's not as bad as what happens later, and Mark will tell us. And Jesus could do no mighty work there. Notice, Mark is very strong and very straightforward. Jesus could do no mighty work there because of their unbelief. Matthew, of course, will change it. Jesus did not do. Matthew will not allow Jesus to be shortchanged in any way. So Jesus did not do in Matthew. But Mark will tell us what seems to have happened really. And Jesus could do no mighty work there. Because they had labeled him, they had stereotyped him, and they would refuse to see beyond. Am I one of those who constantly says, I know everything about everything? And am I one of those, therefore, who has stopped listening? Am I one of those who, in my dealings with people, already judge them because I think I know their attitude, their behavior, their words? Am I one of those who has labeled and stereotyped people based on their background, where they're going to come from or where they come from, their caste, their language, their color? These, my brothers, are questions which we ask as we reflect on this first attitude. The second attitude is what I call infighting. In earlier talks, I used to use the term confrontation. And I interpreted confrontation, which now I use infighting, as talking about a person when the person is not present. This is so common and so disgusting. So common. There is a legend about Ignatius that when sitting at table, this would happen even at the time of Ignatius, that they would talk about a person. As a matter of fact, one of the reasons for bringing in reading at table, and we do it only in our novitiates and junior and then forget about it, one of the reasons for reading at table was to focus not so much on your food, but to focus on spirituality also. But a second reason is, I would think, to have less time to talk about people. Because table is the time when we talk about somebody who's not there. And if you're talking about a person who is there, it's okay. But often we talk about a person, as they say, behind the person's back. Actually, you're talking in front of the back, but it's not behind the back. And that's why I said, when the person is not present, we talk about him. So this legend about Ignatius is this, that when at table, he found that the conversation was going in this direction, that people were talking about another who was not present. He would say to everyone present at the table, let's talk of Pope Marcellus. Pope Marcellus was a pope who had a very, very, very short reign. And because he had a short reign, he was considered a very holy pope and did not do anything to rock the boat as such. So the mention of Pope Marcellus meant to the people sitting at table, it's time to change the topic. The first question I need to ask myself is, why do I need to talk about the person when the person is not present? How does it help me? I can never understand how it helps me to talk about somebody when the person is not present. You will not believe this, brothers, but I have made a resolution that I will never, never, never talk about a person except to my spiritual director if the person is not present. Never. So when a person is not there, the only reason why you would talk about him is either that you want to pull the person down and want to influence others about his behavior, or that you want to feel good and superior to him, that you don't have those qualities, those negative qualities, and he has them. But I find it disgusting, and I find it totally non-Jesuit like and non-Jesus like. So in our communities, so very often the conversation is about this or that person, maybe from another community, but that person is not there. Some years ago, the bishop of a particular diocese wrote me an email. And in the email, he said to me, Father, so and so is a seminarian from my diocese. He was to be ordained a deacon, but I have delayed his diaconate because I've received complaints from the parish priest where he would go for his ministry, his Sunday ministry, and also from the rector of the seminary that his diaconate must be delayed. Since you have taught him in all the 3 years in theology, I would request you, because he has asked for this, to kindly take him under your wing and guide him during this year when I'm asked him to go out of the seminary and he will do 1 year work outside. So will you kindly guide him, direct him, because he wants to be in Mumbai. I wrote back to the bishop. I said, Bishop, I'll be very happy to take this seminarian and direct him as best I can, but I would like you to do 2 things before I do that. And the first is this: write to the parish priest of the parish where he was going for his ministry and ask the parish priest how many times he talked with this seminarian. He told him, my brother, you're not on the right track. You need to change track. This is what you need to do. That is what you need to do. And second, I said, write the same email to the rector of the seminary. The bishop never replied to that. This particular seminarian came to me for that year. He was so faithful. If he said he was coming on this particular day at this particular time, almost, I would say not almost, but every time he was there 5 minutes before. Today, he's doing exceptionally well in his diocese. He was ordained and is doing exceptionally well. So what I did simply was just guided him, just told him, I challenged him, I told him the things which he needed to hear. But the others were telling the bishop and not him. And I say, he doesn't know. Sometimes it happens with our superiors also. We don't talk. We are scared. We have this position and we want to retain this position. We want to be good with everybody. So we are scared. And that's why we talk behind. That relieves some tension. Often we notice in meeting with provincial, the whole conversation is about everybody else and nothing about yourself. So it's so strange. Sometimes you come out and you realize you've spoken about the superior. If you're not the superior, you spoke about the members of your community. If you're in that community, you've spoken about everyone else, about the cook and about the food and about the accommodation and about your mosquito net. You hardly said anything about yourself. And the provincial also has listened to all that and not carefronted you by telling you, my dear father, talk about yourself. Talk about yourself. Say how you are affected. And so, brothers, in the Gospel of Mark chapter 10, verses 35 to 40, Jesus has just predicted for the third time in chapter 10, 32 to 34, for the third time, Jesus has predicted his passion, his death, and his resurrection. Third time, immediately after they hear the brothers James and John in chapter 10, verses 35 to 40 of the Gospel of Mark, come to Jesus and ask for places of honor, one on the right, one on the left. Now, that is not so bad. At least they were honest. They were honest to admit their desire, their ambition. What happens is the infighting is in chapter 10, verse 41. When the other 10 heard it, they began to be indignant and gossiped about the brothers. They don't tell James and John that what you did is not correct. No, among themselves, among the 10, they discuss it. They were indignant, they were angry, they were upset. And they were not upset so much because James and John did something which was not to be done, but because they were saying, if James is on the right and if John is on the left, where are we going to be? So that is the reason for their being indignant. So this is what I call infighting, confrontation, backbiting, gossip. Unfortunately, my brothers, in our communities, including in very, very, very senior professed communities, this is so often the case. Is it possible for you to make a resolution like I have done, saying I will never talk any negative when the person is not there except to my spiritual director? So if you feel you want to get it out, go to your spiritual director and get it out with him or with her. But otherwise, try to see if you can at least reduce it to a negligible level. The third attitude is what I term as martyr complex. And the word martyr seems to rhyme with Martha. And that's why there is the Martyr Complex also. And what is the Martyr Complex? The Martyr Complex is removing your gaze from what you are meant to do. Because Martha removes her gaze from what she is meant to do, her gaze goes on Mary. He's not doing that. She's not doing that. What happens with you is this, that what you do is you imagine that you are saving the world, which you possibly are. But the problem is when you think that you are saving the world and nobody else is joining you and you feel upset about that. That is the martyr complex. My brothers, we are blessed. In the society, if there is one thing that we enjoy thoroughly, it is freedom. We have lived, all of us, along with many other congregations, many other kinds of people in our homes, in our formation, and even otherwise. And we realize the difference in our formation as compared with almost any other congregation. And what stands out in our formation is the freedom that we are given. And yet, despite this freedom which we are given, we are guilty of this martyr complex, which is, I am the only one and no one else is pulling their weight. I am the only one doing it. Nobody else is bothered. And I say that while it may even be true, what you're saying is true, that you are the only one and nobody else is bothered, my suggestion is this: do what you are called to do. Don't do another's work if you're going to be upset. So Martha is doing, but because her attention is focused on Mary, because her attention is focused on Jesus when it ought not to be. It ought to be on her work, neither on Mary nor on Jesus, but because she removes her gaze from what she is meant to do, she is guilty of this martyr complex. Oh Lord, tell Mary to help me. I'm doing alone the work. So in your case and my case, brothers, this is what can happen to us. That we might think that we are doing such an enormous, we are so busy, we're working so hard, we are so tired. Good, that is fine and it's true. However, don't let that be the reason why you look at others and think they're not pulling their weight. Mark chapter 3, verses 13 to 19 gives us a very, very beautiful lesson. And in this lesson, we are told that Jesus called to him those whom he wanted, not needed. Mark is very clear. Jesus called to him those whom he wanted. And notice, even in Mark chapter 3, when Mark gives us the names of those whom Jesus wanted, he says that at the end, and Judas Iscariot, who betrayed him. So, martyr complex must remind me that there are a variety of people who are called into our society. There are some who will work 24 hours a day. There are some who work 30 hours in a 24-hour day. There are some who work 8 hours, and there are some who do no work at all. While tomorrow I'll speak about confronting those who do no work at all, my suggestion would be to avoid looking at those. If you are a person who works 30 hours in a 24-hour day, do that because you want to do that, not because somebody else is doing it or because somebody else is not doing it. And so the invitation is this: when I am focusing on my work, let me focus on my work. If I do that, then my gaze will not be diverted to another who might not be pulling his weight. If I'm focusing on my ministry and I'm convinced about what I'm doing, then I really wouldn't be pulled down by somebody who's not doing what he has to do in his ministry. And then, when my gaze is on the Lord, let it continue to be on the Lord. Every one of us, my brothers, if we go back to our vocation, at least when we have now, you might say, fine-tuned our vocation. When we came, right, when we were novices, the reasons may have been different. And now as we go on, we fine-tune those reasons, we refine them. Every one of us knows that our prime reason as the name of our society suggests, is to follow Jesus poor, chaste, and humble. The reason for my evangelical counsels, the reason why I took the vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience is in order to follow Jesus poor, chaste, and humble. And so now, let me not remove my gaze from him. Let me continue to keep my sights fixed on the Lord. If I do that, then no matter what others do or do not do, I will not let it affect me. I might encourage them, I might exhort them, I might challenge them, but I will not let it affect me and affect the work that I am meant to do. The fourth is pulling apart. I'm in a meeting. In the meeting, I am not the superior of the community. The superior has called a meeting. I am a member of the community. When I go to that meeting, I must remember this. What is my role in this meeting? And usually, in a meeting, you have two roles, one of two roles. One is of a suggestion maker, another is of the decision taker. So, in a meeting that is called by the superior of the community, if I am not the superior, if I am a member of the community, then I am a suggestion maker. I am not a decision taker. Many years ago, a very senior, very committed, very focused Jesuit of my province came to me and said, Errol, I'm going to stop attending these meetings. I said, but why? He says, we go for the meetings, we discuss, we make suggestions, and they do whatever they want. They means the ones in charge. They do whatever they want. The provincial or the consultant or whoever. They do whatever they want. So I stopped him. I said, my friend, because he was so committed, so focused, and so honest. He was very honest and continues to be a very honest Jesuit. I made him sit down and I said, my friend, when you go for the meeting, what is your role? He was confused. My role? I'm a Jesuit. Yeah, but what is your role? Are you a suggestion maker in the meeting or a decision taker? The moment I put this question to him, brother, because he was so involved and so committed and so honest, his eyes were open. He says, I got the point. I got the point. Now, what happens with us is we misunderstand our roles. We imagine that our suggestion is the best in the world, that there is no one who has made as beautiful a suggestion, as practical a suggestion as we have made, and therefore it has to be taken. Now, the superior, the provincial, whoever it might be in charge, looks at the suggestion and we don't judge them. We don't judge them. Ours is not to judge. They think that this decision, this suggestion is impractical. They think it's not the best suggestion and they simply put it away. Sometimes they may give you a reason and other times they may not give you a reason, but it doesn't matter. Why? It doesn't matter because you are a suggestion maker. I am known as a very strong Jesuit. And I make my suggestions strongly, even assertively, I hope not aggressively. I make them assertively. But even though I make them assertively, believe me, my brothers, when I say this, I am as detached from the suggestion as I am assertive about it. Why? Because I've entered that meeting with my awareness of my role intact. There was a time when I was superior, when I would take the decisions. There was a time when I was member of the community, when I would make the suggestions. So, pulling apart is sometimes what happens when we misunderstand our role. So we are in a community, the superior has called a meeting, I make my suggestion, it is not accepted, another suggestion is accepted, and the People move in that direction. The community is moving in that direction. Now that upsets me sometimes. That is not the way. That is not the way. And so I respond negatively. I don't pull my weight. I don't put my shoulder to the plow. I don't put my shoulder to the wheel. I just say, let them do what they want. Let them go and die. I couldn't care. If I do that, my brothers, it is because I have misunderstood my role. And this was done by Judas. The betrayal by Judas, or the plot by Judas to betray, is mentioned in all the Gospels. Mark chapter 14, verses 10 to 11. Matthew chapter 26, verses 14 to 16. Luke chapter 22, verses 3 to 6, where Luke will tell us that Satan entered him. You can see as the Gospels are moving, and Luke is much later than Matthew and Mark, you can see now the imputation of the motive. Satan entered him. And John chapter 13, verse 2 will tell us the same thing. So you see, as the Gospels move, there is an imputation of the motive. Why did Judas betray Jesus? This is my interpretation, that it is likely, and from the Gospel we can see that it was possible, that Jesus would have meetings with the 12. And in his meeting with the 12, as we can see from Mark 8:31, 9:31, and Mark 10:32 to 34, 3 times in Mark, and therefore many other times possibly, Jesus talks to his disciples about his passion, about his death, and about his resurrection. And all the 3 times, the disciples don't understand. So it is likely that in these meetings, the disciples, like Peter, for example, says, Lord, this should never happen to you, in the Gospel of Mark. The other disciples also in their community meetings would have said to Jesus, Lord, this is not the way to go. We want you to come as a warrior Messiah. We want you to come as a strong Messiah. We don't want you to subdue yourself to the religious authorities or to anyone else. We want you to show your power. The disciples would have suggested this way because they want the Lord to show. They know that he can. He's a strong Lord. And Judas would possibly be among them also. And while Jesus would possibly hear their suggestion, he would say, but that is not the way. A better way is the way which I am suggesting, and this is the way I'm going to go. Now, while the others might have accepted that Jesus would not go this way, and they may have made a suggestion again and again and again, Judas would possibly have not accepted it. He wanted to pull apart, and so he even imagined that if he pulled apart, his intention may have been good. If I pull apart, if I go and complain to the religious authorities, if they come to arrest him, maybe then he will show his power. But he pulls apart. So the response of the other 11 is to say, okay, we have made a suggestion. The suggestion has not been accepted. We know where our authority ends. And our authority ends with making the suggestion, and that's why we will not proceed further. Judas did not know where his authority ended, and that is why he proceeded further. He pulled apart. And so one of my maxims, which I try to live by my life in the society, is at every moment in your life, know where your authority ends. If you are the principal of a school, you will make decisions for the school as principal. However, as principal, you may not be the superior of the community. So the superior will make decisions in the community. If you know that role, then there is no tension between the directors of works. In our society, there is often meetings between superiors and directors of works, and in many places, there is a lot of tension, anxiety, and so on, because both of them do not know where their authority ends. The principal thinks his authority extends even to the community, and the superior thinks he must interfere in the school. And so there is a challenge. Pulling apart means you say, let them do what they want, let them go and do whatever they care. I couldn't care less. I will pull apart. That I don't think is the way. We know what happened to Judas. And finally, my brothers, this overarching attitude. I didn't want to mention it before, and that's why I brought it till the end. But even at the end, it is like a climax, the overarching attitude of pessimism. In Mark chapter 6, verse 37, Jesus has seen the crowd. And he wants to feed that crowd, not only with the spiritual food which he has given them because he taught them, but he wants to feed the crowd with physical food. And so he turns to his disciples, that the disciples must give them something to eat. The response of the disciples is harsh, is rude, and most important, it is sarcastic. The disciples are harsh and rude, which is bad enough. But sarcastic means they put a dampener to what Jesus can do. They put a block to what Jesus can do through their questions. Are we to go and buy 200 denarii worth of bread and give it to them to eat? There are many things involved in this question. Are we to go? First of all, are you expecting us to be their servants? First point, are we to go? Second, 200 denarii, as we know, is a large sum of money, little more than 6 months' wages. So 200 denarii. In that 200 denarii is counted which bakery is going to be open at this time to get this much of bread. So first of all, the amount of 200 denarii. Secondly, the amount of bread, and then we give them to eat. Once again, the servant. So there are many things involved in this question, but the main things are they are rude, they are harsh, and most important, they are sarcastic. They put a dampener, they put a block, they put an obstacle to what Jesus can do. That is their pessimistic attitude. In Mark chapter 4, verse 38, only in Mark, do they respond so negatively when they are caught in the storm. And their response to the sleeping Jesus is, "Teacher, do you not care? We are perishing. Do you not care?" So they attribute to Jesus a non-caring attitude. They accuse Jesus of being non-caring because they are pessimistic. Pessimism, my brothers, is a way of looking in a negative manner. And my preferred word for obstacles, hurdles, difficulties is challenges. For me, challenges is a positive word, or even opportunities. Challenges or opportunities rather than obstacles or hurdles or problems or difficulties. These are somehow negative words. And while it is true that we might be realistic, we must be realistic, we also need to be optimistic. I remember before we began the South Asian Assistancy meeting in 2000, Father Peter Hans Kalbenbach sent us a message. And his message was very beautifully summarized in one line when he said to us, "Dream dreams with your feet planted firmly on the ground." Dream dreams with your feet firmly planted on the ground. That means be an optimist and at the same time be as real as you can. Avoid this negative way of looking. My brothers, keep this in mind. With any member of your community, with any situation, there are at least two ways of looking, at least two ways. And these two broad ways are a negative way or a positive way? And you might say to me, but some fellows, there is nothing positive in them. So what can we see? And I tell you, you will see if you look hard enough. And I remind you that, like you, I also have lived, am living in community. So it is not as if I'm telling you by living on a mountain by myself and giving you this advice of community life. I'm giving it to you even as I am challenged in all the communities in which I have lived. Yesterday, my brothers, I suggested two ways of the examination of consciousness. At that time, I deliberately never said I'm going to suggest a third way. And this third way, I want to suggest now that you have heard me talk about these attitudes which break community. It is likely that you may be able to resonate with either all of these attitudes, you may be able to resonate with three of these attitudes, or two of them, one of them, or you may have your own. This may be a starting point for you to reflect on your own. What I would suggest, the third way of examination is this. Take either these five or others which you have on a scale of 1 to 10 in your examen, on a scale of 1 to 10, ask yourself, where exactly am I today on a scale of 1 to 10 with regard to this attitude? Where was I from morning till lunchtime with regard to this attitude? And then you go to the next and to the next if you have many. My brothers, community life is not always easy, but as a matter of fact, I find it is tremendously challenging. And because it is challenging, I enjoy community life as much as I can. We know that St. John Berkman's had a challenge with community life, not so much the life in community, but because he was of the opinion it took him away from this intimacy with God. Be that as it may, we are men on a mission, and in the 35th General Congregation, very, very clearly in that triptych, which is ICM, identity, community, mission. And we were told that community is not only on mission, but community is mission.